The Crimson Claw Part 1. Gotham City has a new hero. Chapter 6. The Gift. I watched Selina melt into the dispersing crowd, my fingers still tingling from where she touched my hand. But my journalist instincts wouldn't let me relax. Something felt wrong about this whole picture-perfect evening. The three painted performers were still working the crowd, now closer to the security perimeter around Shrek. I adjusted my camera and started weaving through families and couples, keeping my distance but closing the gap. My new suit hugged my body beneath my jeans and burgundy sweater. Bruce had outdone himself with the material. Lightweight, flexible, and supposedly bulletproof. I'd been skeptical until he demonstrated by shooting it with a 9mm. The suit better live up to its reputation, because my gut was screaming that tonight was about to go sideways. Did you get good shots of the tree? Vicky Vale materialized beside me, her professional smile in place. She had her own camera around her neck, though I noticed she'd spent most of the ceremony chatting with a city councilman. Enough for the fluff piece, I said, still tracking the performers, though I'm more interested in those street entertainers. Vicky followed my gaze. The circus people, they're just adding atmosphere. Very festive. Maybe. I zoomed in with my camera, catching the tallest one checking his watch. When did Gotham start allowing unlicensed performers at official events? You're always looking for a story, aren't you? Vicky shook her head. Not everything is Watergate, Renee. Sometimes a tree lighting is just a tree lighting. She walked away, but I couldn't share her certainty. Bruce's text had been clear: red triangle activity near the plaza. These performers fit the description of Penguin's gang. But what were they planning? Then I saw it. Near the base of the massive Christmas tree, partially hidden by the crowd, sat an enormous wrapped box. It had to be 8 feet tall and 6 feet wide, decorated with oversized red ribbon and an elaborate bow. The paper was festive gold with candy cane stripes. When did that arrive? I muttered, moving closer. I don't like the looks of this. I'd been here since setup began 2 hours ago. That box hadn't been part of the staging. Someone had delivered it during the ceremony itself, while everyone was distracted by lights and speeches. My phone buzzed. Bruce, get clear. Now, that box wasn't on any permit. I was already moving, but not away. My fingers found the edge of my sweater, ready to strip down to the suit underneath, if needed. The three performers had also noticed the box, or rather, they were deliberately ignoring it, which was somehow worse. They were edging toward the exit, their juggling acts abandoned. The security detail around Shrek hadn't spotted the package yet. They were too busy managing the VIP exit, creating a corridor for Shrek and the Ice Princess to reach their waiting cars. The crowd had thinned, but hundreds of people still milled around, taking photos, letting children play near the tree. Too many civilians. Too many targets. I broke into a jog, my camera bouncing against my chest. Excuse me, coming through? A mounted police officer sat on his horse near the tree, scanning the crowd with bored efficiency. I made a beeline for him. Officer, that box, did you see who delivered it? He looked down at me, then at my press badge. The present? Some delivery company dropped it off. Part of the decorations, I assume. It's not on the permit list, I said, hoping he'd take the bait. I'm doing a piece on event planning. Can you check with your supervisor? He frowned, uncertainty crossing his face. His hand moved to his radio, but before he could speak, the box moved. A tremor ran through the enormous package, subtle but unmistakable. The bow twitched. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, the entire front panel exploded outward in a cascade of gold paper and ribbon. The crowd screamed. What emerged wasn't a giant toy or a publicity stunt. It was chaos incarnated. A dozen figures in garish red costumes, faces painted in leering grins, tumbling and cartwheeling into the plaza like a nightmare circus. The Red Triangle Gang. But these weren't the small-time muscle I'd fought before. These performers moved with vicious precision, fanning out in a coordinated pattern that spoke of military training disguised as acrobatics. "Everyone back!" The mounted officer was shouting into his radio, trying to control his spooked horse. "We have a situation at the tree." Pandemonium erupted. Parents grabbed children and ran. The security detail around Shrek went into lockdown mode, hustling him toward his limousine. But the gang wasn't interested in the crowd. They were moving toward two specific targets. One group headed for the armored car that had delivered the ceremony's donation collection. The other group was heading straight for Max Schreck. I ducked behind a hot chocolate stand, my fingers already yanking my sweater over my head. The cold bit into my skin for half a second before the suit's thermal layer activated. I kicked off my boots, stripped my jeans, stuffed everything into my bag, and shoved it behind a trash can. 30 seconds flat. Dick would have been proud. My mask came last, red to match the suit, covering the top half of my face. The claws on my gloves gleamed in the Christmas lights, each tip coated with enough anesthetic to drop a grown man in seconds. The Crimson Claw was about to crash Gotham's holiday celebration. But as I prepared to leap into action, I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. On the far side of the chaos, watching from the shadows near the old Gotham First Bank building, stood two men. One was stocky and clean-cut in an expensive coat. I recognized him from police photos Bruce had shown me. Lieutenant Eckhart, notoriously corrupt, supposedly on Penguin's payroll. The other man was tall and lean with light brown hair, dressed in a sharp suit that seemed at odds with the hungry, predatory way he watched the unfolding chaos. His smile was too wide, too eager. When the Christmas lights hit his face, I saw something in his eyes that reminded me of Freddy Krueger, a kind of gleeful malice that enjoyed suffering. That had to be Jack Napier. Gangster, enforcer, psychopath. And he was pointing directly at the Shrek limousine, giving Eckhart orders I couldn't hear, but could easily guess. I had seconds to choose: stop the Red Triangle gang from robbing the armored car, or intercept whatever Napier and Eckhart had planned for Max Schreck.